15th of June 2023. This is another one of that rip the band-aid off Skidmarks of mine. And in this one the title is China and Democracy. And I can just imagine a lot of guys looking at this video is now immediately sitting up straight and frowning. Because how can I dare to put China and democracy in one sentence? Well, if you are a person that are willing to listen to the other side and then make the decision for yourself, if you're one of those, you will find value in what I'm going to tell you now. But if you're one of those goldfish in that little glass bowl that when he sees movement comes up and he wants to eat and wait for the media to feed him, you are going to be a hell of a disturbed. Let's look at the facts. China is very fast rising on the world table. Let's call it a table. China is sitting at that table. And they started off at that table by first standing against the wall and all the other important people were sitting. And then later on, they gave him a little stool and he could sit between two guys just a little bit in the back. And then later on, they gave him a chair and he's sitting at the table. And when it comes to diplomacy, Xi Jinping is now sitting at the head of the table. That's undeniably so. What he managed to do in the Middle East between Iran and Saudi is of monumental importance. For us here in South Africa, the average Afrikaner, white South African, and a lot of blacks, don't make a mistake, if you mention the word China, the first thing that jumps into their mind is communist, communist. Now, that's the same shit that we had with Russia. There's still today, people in this country, you say Russia, they say communist. That is the reality. And that is the after effect of a media propaganda brainwashing process over years. We white Afrikaners were programmed with the slogan Rooi Gevaar, Red Danger, and it stuck. I mean, that shit stuck in my head until a year ago. And it was a massive catastrophe for me mentally to realize that that is not applicable anymore. Yes, it was applicable, but it's not applicable anymore. Russia and communism died when the USSR broke up, about 2 years after that. Fact of the matter is, all of us, most of us, associate China with just one thing, and that's communism. And then, here comes the kicker. Then we start imagining what the fuck is going on in China. And then we get these wild dreams and visions and tidbits from the media. And we form a picture and we form an opinion. And then we stick with that opinion. Now, I have mentioned many times in my Skidmarks that people must make sure of their facts about China before you make a stupid statement on social media. And I have been toying with doing this Skidmark for a long time. And about 2 weeks ago, or maybe not full 2 weeks ago, Briekmerke had a Chinese lady on his program. And it was an hour and a half debate. And I sat in my chair here, nailed to the screen. My jaw dropped many times. Yes, she works for what is called state media. But the whole West and the mainstream media in the whole West is also my state media. Twitter files have showed it. You can see it. Fact of the matter is, that's her position, and she's doing a splendid job. She is so pleasant to listen to, and on top of it all, she's bloody pretty. Reality is this: few of us in the West has any idea what is really going on in China. And the main thing that most people will utter is China, communists. China, communists. Now, if you are an informed person, you will immediately understand that China could never achieve the industrial growth and social upliftment that they have achieved under communism. It would never happen. That is just logics. Look at their Belt and Road projects. Go and Google or DuckDuckGo or search wherever you want. How many kilometers of high-speed rail and highways has China built in China and in neighboring countries over the past 40 years? Go and check that for you. The Chinese built on average 5,000 kilometers of high-speed rail per year. The whole of America, I don't think the whole of America has got 100 kilometers of high-speed rail. But the Americans has got a fucking lot of money to go around the world and terrorize countries. But China is the bad one. And another tidbit. Over the past 30 years, China has managed to lift 900 million people out of poverty. Chew on that one. And you can go and check me, man. The facts are there. It's published. That's the reality. That is why the Chinese government is still in charge. Not because they terrorize the people with soldiers and police. They don't do what the Canadians did to the truckers. They don't do what the Australians did to the people that protested against the snakebite. They don't do that. But the West wants you to believe that. And I want to discuss the article written by this girl on the Chinese democracy, let's call it that. But before I do that, I want you to think, about 2 months ago, the Western media was all over the show telling you that the protesters, that white page protesters in China, is going to topple Xi Jinping's government. I listened to a debate with a guy, he's an Italian guy, but he's living in China for the past, I think, 16 years already. He's a journalist. And he said the city in which he lives has got 45 million residents. Think about that. 45 million. That is more than, there's a hell of a lot of countries that don't have 45 million people. 45 million people in that city. And at one of the universities, there was a protest. 10,000 students involved. And they were protesting about, not about the stuff that the West were telling you, they were protesting about some local stuff that they were more unhappy about. 10,000. So 10,000, the Western media want you to believe 10,000 student protesters will topple the government of a nation of 1.6 billion people. If you believe that, you are stupid. Nothing else. And don't take it personally. But if you just make the calculations, you will understand. Yeah, the fucking 10,000 people. 10,000 people can't even upset that city of 45 million people. At any moment, there's more than 10,000 people stopping to take a coffee from a takeaway shop. Think about this. But let's get back to Li Jingjing. And I would urge that you go and find her on social media. You will learn a lot. China's democracy involves people from all groups in policy making, understanding China's method. And now, if that heading alone is already enough to make a few heads pop. But we must look at the Shanghai Cooperation Organization first to get an idea of what is the structures in which the Chinese society must operate. Not the Chinese society, China as a country. The Shanghai Cooperation Organization, or SCO, is an intergovernmental organization founded in Shanghai on 15 June 2001. The SCO currently comprises 8 member states: China, India, Kazakhstan, Kyrgyzstan, Russia, Pakistan, Tajikistan, Uzbekistan. 4 observer states interested in ascending to full membership: Afghanistan, Belarus, Iran, and Mongolia. And 6 dialogue partners: Armenia, Azerbaijan, Cambodia, Nepal, Sri Lanka, and Turkey. In 2021, the decision was made to start the accession process of Iran to the SCO as a full member, and Egypt and Qatar, as well as Saudi, became dialogue partners. I'm not going to read the rest. You can stop the thing if you want to read the rest. The fact of the matter is, that is a huge community. Huge. And amongst them, they have got the population numbers and the military might to look after themselves. And the worst shocker for the West, amongst them, they've got an industrial capacity, maybe 1.5 times of that, or if not more, of that of the so-called West. Take that in mind. Now, these countries in the East there, Asia, is renowned for the discipline in their citizens. Chinese children at school, 1st and 2nd grades already, learns mathematics and science. China produces thousands, literally thousands of engineers per year. Per year. Think about that. And then, the fact that they are an industrial monster makes sense. They've got the manpower. They've got the discipline. They've got the raw materials. That is something that you must keep in mind. But no, you want your thoughts about China to be controlled and dictated by the Western media telling you China is a communist country. But let's continue. Involving everyone in decision making. Every year during China's annual political meeting, the 2 sessions, which sets yearly goals for the country, nearly 3,000 people wear suits, traditional ethnic clothes, and military uniforms that reflect the groups, regions, and sectors they represent, and gather at the Great Hall of the People in central Beijing. They are deputies to China's National People's Congress, the country's top legislature and the highest organ of state power, and members of the Chinese People's Political Consultative Conference, the country's top political advisory body. Together, the annual meeting of the NPC and the CPPCC are referred to as the two sessions. Already there you can see, listen, there's not an autocrat or a dictator sitting in China running the show. There's 3,000 people in these two bodies. 3,000 people. They are the people who shape China as they have the power to legislate, appoint and remove officials, make decisions on matters of national development and supervise. Here I need to explain the crucial institutional guarantee for the effective running of the country, the system of people's congresses. In China, people exercise state power through people's congresses. People's congresses exercise state power collectively on behalf of the people. The National People's Congress is the highest organ of state power. Local people's congresses at all levels are local agencies of state power. All administrative, supervisory, judicial and procuratorial organs of the state are created by the people's congresses, to which they are responsible and by which they are supervised. Before holding the NPC, people's congresses were already held at the townships, country, city and provincial levels to make sure motions and advice could be raised from bottom to top. And I have spoken in a previous Skidmark of mine about this thing of the Western democracies. Comes election times, they're all over the TV, all over the radio, all over the social media, all over the lampposts and walls and everywhere to get elected. Now you live in a rural area, you're a farmer or something, and you vote for that oak on the pole there. But once the election is over and you get, and the delegates are being selected by the parties, not by you, by the parties, and they go to Parliament. I'm talking about South Africa. And then they go to Parliament. You must be fucking daydreaming if you think they represent you. They don't even know who you are. But look at how it's working in China. From the bottom up, the people are selected by the communities. To make sure all groups are represented at the national level, the deputies come from every ethnic group with various backgrounds. Take note. To make sure all groups are represented at the national level, the deputies come from every ethnic group with various backgrounds. Take this here for as an example. A total of 2,977 deputies were elected to the 14th NPC. Among them, 442 are from 55 ethnic minority groups in China, accounting for 14.85%. And every minority group has at least one deputy to the NPC. Those who are from what are referred to as peasant and worker backgrounds are 497 in total, accounting for 16.7%. Both numbers were higher than at last year's two sessions. Now those two percentages together brings you over 30%. So it's 30% of those delegates are from the rural areas and minority groups. 30%. Think about that. And then she says, I've interviewed dozens of deputies from different ethnic groups. They all shared the pride they felt in representing their people at the NPC and bringing advice to improve their people's lives. If we, who come from different ethnic groups, can hold together like a pomegranate seeds, as President Xi Jinping said, and build our country, our Chinese nation will definitely be greater and greater, said Zhao Shi, a deputy of the Bui minority from southwest China's Guizhou province. Most of the deputies to all levels of people's congresses, in fact, come from the grassroots and have close connections with the people, so they can solicit and submit people's suggestions and advice through various forms and channels. At the end of 2020, 2.62 million people were serving as deputies to the people's congresses at all levels nationwide. Among them, those at country and township levels accounted for 94.5% of the total. Think about that. Think about that. Some may ask, can the deputies really make a difference? I will share the story of another deputy I've interviewed. At this year's two sessions, I interviewed a deputy named Zhang Shuqin from Linhui City, East China's Shandong province, who has been working as a teacher for 36 years, dedicated to improving the education system at the grassroots. She has been re-elected as a deputy to the NPC for the 4th time, which means 2023 will be her 16th year working as an NPC deputy. In the past 15 years, I've submitted over 240 motions and advice to the NPC, and nearly half of them have already been implemented, she said. My motion on cracking down on human trafficking has been incorporated into the criminal law, and some others have been written into Shandong province law on protecting minors. The development of education at local levels can be seen through the proposals and advice she submitted every year, from focusing on upgrading infrastructure for schools in rural areas to improving salaries and social insurance to attract young, talented teachers to stay in rural areas, to now focusing on providing mental health consultations to students in rural areas. Dramatic changes and improvements have taken place all across the vast country in the past few decades, with our deputies coming from every region and sector bringing their issues to the national level and their motions being carefully reviewed and implemented. China couldn't have accomplished what it has. Think about these things. But this lady that was interviewed, take note, she's a highly qualified teacher, and she represents teaching and student needs and requirements. Not like here in South Africa, where a fucking stupid IQ 70 cadre is deployed to be the Minister of Education. Think about that. But South Africa is a democracy, China is communist. Think about that. Multi-party cooperation, political consultation. Now this may be coming as a shocker. Multi-parties in China, how the fuck did that happen? Where was I when that happened? Must be a lie. Suit yourself. Multi-party cooperation, political consultation. Some may not know that China is neither a one-party system nor a multiple-party system, whereby powers vie for control and govern in turn. It's a multi-party cooperation system in which the Communist Party of China exercises state power. In addition to the CPC, there are 8 other political parties: the Revolutionary Committee of the Chinese Kuomintang, the Chinese Democratic League, the China National Democratic Construction Association, the China Association of Promoting Democracy, the Chinese Peasants and Workers Democratic Party, the China Qigong Party, the Jushin Society, and the Taiwan Democratic Self-Government League. Amazing how many times the word democracy and democratic appears in that. Think about that. As the governing party, the CPC works together with the other parties and the non-affiliates. Members of the other parties and the non-affiliates also hold certain percentages of deputies to people's congresses. Also crucial to China's political institution is the CPPCC, which promotes unity, strengthens multi-party cooperation, and practices people's democracy in the process of political consultation. Through the institutions of the CPPCC, representatives from all political parties, people's organizations, ethnic groups, and social sectors engage in political consultation. They make proposals, conduct inspections and field surveys, and report on social conditions and public opinion on a regular basis. On an equal footing, members of CPPCC conduct extensive, constructive consultations and put forward opinions and suggestions on important national policies and strategies and major economic and social matters. Now, I really hope that this gave you a little bit of an insight of what is actually going on in the Chinese political environment. Not what the Western media is telling you, that Xi Jinping is a dictator and he runs the country with the army. This is total bullshit. And what you must also take in mind, the Chinese are intelligent people, and the population is actually highly educated. Yes, there are some peasants in the rural areas, old people, that are not on that level. But the generations, starting people born around about the 80s, are in a different class. But the Chinese people are not stupid, and they are hard workers, and they are loyal to their tasks. Think about these things. Just ask yourself, how is it possible for China to lift 900 million people out of poverty? That alone should make you respect them. But I've said it many times, democracy is an illusion. It's a scam. You cannot tell me that the current American political system and what is going on there is a democracy. The people has got fucking little to say in what Biden does. Biden is controlled by capitalists. Capital has taken control over the American democracy. It's no longer a one man, one vote. It is $1, one vote. Think about that. Look at Europe. Look at Europe. The EU. That's not a democracy. That EC. Nobody in that EC has been elected. But yet, they make rules and make decisions that affect every person in the EU. And they cannot be countered. They cannot be questioned. That is communist. What you're seeing in the EU today, the EU, Europe, the European nations has adopted the EUSSR as their mode of political living. Think about that. That EC in Brussels is nothing else than the old Soviet USSR Politburo. They are unaccountable. They've not been elected. They've been appointed. You should go and find out who appointed them. Ursula von der Crazy. She was a horrific failure as a German Minister of Defense. I mean a chick, Minister of Defense. What the fuck is that? She was a disaster Minister of Defense. But she's connected. So they got rid of her as Minister of Defense and they put her in Brussels. So she gets promoted due to the level of her stupid actions in the Ministry of Defense in Germany. You want to call that democracy? Forget it. Look at our South Africa in the raw. The kraal headman represents all the people in that kraal. That headman reports to the chief. Those chiefs, from the various regions, they report to the king. And it worked for them. But no, that's not democracy. The Americans brainwashed the world to make us believe they are the only representatives of democracy. And how do they bring their democracies? Go and look at Libya. Go and look at Iraq. Go and look at Yemen. Go and look at Syria. Go and look at Afghanistan. Go and look at Kosovo. They bring their democracy with bombs, destroying the countries and killing millions of people. That's democracy from the Americans. And I'm going to leave you with the final one. Cambodia. It's a landlocked country and struggled. America dropped bombs and landmines, 5 units for each citizen of Cambodia. That country is covered in unexploded explosives. It will apparently, I read somewhere, it will, at the current rate which they are doing it, it will take them 1,000 years to demine that place. When the Chinese built the highway and the railway link in there, their biggest issue was to demine the route on which this rail and road must go. And here's the final tidbit. Everywhere in Asia where the Chinese is helping countries by providing vital infrastructure like road and rail, everywhere, the Americans has got some terror organizations that they finance through their open society cock and all that to undermine what the Chinese is doing. But you want to live in that dream world that the West is democratic, China is communist. Look at the Chinese growth, look at the Chinese education, look at that and ask yourself, compare that to a plunging economic system in the West. Bankrupt system, bankrupt. Incidentally, the Chinese owes the bulk of the American debt. The bulk of the American debt. They can pull the plug tonight if they want to. So, I really hope that you learn something about China and that this will inspire you to think a bit. Just think. Use your head, think. And then go and try and find information, real information. Not this bullshit that MSN is pumping into your head. Not that. Don't do that. Please give me a like and a subscribe and share the thing. Thank you for your support.